Homily 42. On the kinds of different temptations, and on how sweet are the temptations that come to pass and are endured for the truth's sake, and on the levels and disciplines through which the wise man makes his way. The virtues follow one another in succession, so that the path of virtue might not become grievous and burdensome, and so that by being achieved in order progressively they might be made light. Thus the hardships endured for the sake of the good should be as beloved as the good itself. No one can achieve true poverty, true non-possessiveness, unless he resolves within himself to endure tribulations with gladness. And no man can endure tribulations unless he believes that there is something more excellent than bodily comfort, the which he will receive in recompense for the afflictions that he has prepared himself to undergo. The love of afflictions must first have stirred in the man who has prepared to deprive himself of possessions, for only thereafter does the thought come to him to possess none of the things of this world. And every man who draws nigh to affliction is made steadfast by faith, and then he approaches afflictions. A man who deprives himself of material things but has not cast off the activity of the senses, I mean sight and hearing, has procured for himself a double portion of affliction, and will doubly suffer hardship and tribulation. For indeed, what profit is it for a man to deprive himself of sensory things, and yet through the senses still to delight in them? For by the passions which they cause, he experiences the same thing which formerly he suffered in actual deed, since the recollection of his accustomed intercourse with sensory things has not been effaced from his thinking. If mental images of things, in absence of the things themselves, cause a man to feel distressed, what are we to say if the things themselves are near and round about us? How excellent in this respect is the discipline of solitude! How greatly does it aid! For it mightily silences the thoughts, provides strength for endurance, and teaches a man great patience in the afflictions which must necessarily come upon him. Do not seek advice from a man who does not lead a life similar to your own, even if he be very wise. Confide your thoughts to a man who, though he lack learning, has experience in spiritual things, rather than to a learned philosopher who speaks on the basis of speculations, having no actual experience. And what is experience? Experience is not that which is gained when a man approaches and gazes upon things, for since he does not pass time with them, he secures no true knowledge of them, but when he clearly perceives by trial their profit and detriment. For often a thing will seem harmful, yet within it is found to be wholly full of profit, and likewise understandable the converse of this also. I mean, a thing often appears to be profitable, whereas within it is filled with much harm. So it is that many men are harmed by what seems very profitable, and the testimony of their knowledge is not true. Therefore, follow the counsel of a man who knows how with patience to make trial of things that demand discernment. Not every man is able to give trustworthy advice, but only he who has first governed himself well, who possesses knowledge gained from experience in all things, who does not love himself, and who does not shy away from calumnies. Whenever in your path you find unchanging peace, beware. You are very far from the divine paths trodden by the weary feet of the saints. For as long as you are journeying in the way to the city of the kingdom, and are drawing nigh to the city of God, this will be a sign for you, the strength of the temptations that you encounter. And the nearer you draw nigh and progress, the more temptations will multiply against you. Whenever, therefore, you perceive in your soul diverse and stronger temptations in your path, know that at that time your soul has in fact secretly entered a new and higher level, and that grace has been added to her in the state wherein she was found. For God leads the soul into the afflictions of trials in exact proportion to the magnitude of the grace he bestows. Yet I speak not of worldly trials that come upon some in order to bridle their wickedness and their manifestly evil deeds, nor yet of bodily disturbances, but of trials that are suitable to monks dwelling in stillness. These we shall specify later. But if a man's soul has an infirmity and has not strength enough for great temptations, and she therefore asks that she should not enter into them, and God hearkens to her, then know for a certainty that inasmuch as the soul is insufficient for great trials, in the same measure is she insufficient for great gifts, and in so far as great temptations are prevented from entering upon the soul, to the same degree great gifts are withheld from her. For God does not grant a great gift without a great trial. In his wisdom which is beyond the understanding of his creatures, God has ordained that gifts be bestowed in proportion to temptations. You may comprehend, therefore, from the difficult afflictions which befall you through God's providence, the degree of the gift your soul has received from his majesty, and in proportion to the affliction, consolation is given. Question. Does then the trial come first, and afterward the gift, or the gift first and the trial follow behind it? Answer. A trial does not come unless the soul has first secretly received both a portion greater than the measure which she has formerly received and the Spirit of grace. The Lord's temptation and the trials of the apostles testify to the truth of this, for they were not permitted to enter into temptation until they had received the Comforter. It is fitting that those who partake of good should endure also their trials, because their affliction is mingled together with the good, for so it was pleasing to the wise God to do. And if it happens so, that is, that a gift is before trial, nevertheless it is most certain that for the testing of a man's freedom, his awareness of temptations precedes his awareness of a gift, for grace never enters a man before he has tasted temptations. Hence, in reality, grace comes first, but in the awareness of the senses, it delays to manifest itself. At the time of these trials, we should have within us two contradictory things, which are entirely unlike each other. These are joy and fear. Joy, because we are found in the path trodden by the saints, or rather by him who gives life to all things, and this becomes evident to us when we carefully discern our temptations. But we should have fear, because perhaps we're being tried through these things by reason of our pride. Humble-hearted men, however, are made wise by grace to be able to discern all such things, and to know what kind of trial is the fruit of pride, and what kind of trial is a blow inflicted by divine love. For the trials resulting from a man's diligent practice, struggle, and progress in good differ from trials that are permitted to come upon a man for his chastisement because of the pride of his heart. The trials of the friends of God, that is to say, the humble. The trials that are inflicted by the paternal rod for the soul's progress and growth, and wherein she may be trained, are the following: sloth, oppressiveness of the body, enfeeblement of the limbs, despondency, confusion of mind, bodily pains, temporary loss of hope, darkening of thoughts, absence of help from men, scarcity of bodily necessities, and the like. By these temptations a man's soul feels herself lonely and defenseless. His heart is deadened and filled with humility, and he is trained thereby to come to yearn for his Creator. Yet divine providence proportions these trials to the strength and needs of those who suffer them. In them are mingled both consolation and griefs, light and darkness, wars and aid. In short, they straighten and enlarge. This is the sign of the increase of God's help. The trials of the enemies of God, that is to say, the proud. But the trials that God allows to fall upon men who are shameless, whose thinking is exalted in the face of God's goodness, and who abuse his goodness in their pride, are the following: manifest temptations of the demons, which also exceed the limit of the strength of men's souls; the withdrawal of the forces of wisdom, which men possess; the piercing sensation of the thought of fornication, which is allowed to assault them to humble their arrogance. Quick temper, the desire to have one's own way. Disputatiousness, a scornful heart, complete delusion of the mind, blasphemy against the name of God, absurd notions that are entirely ridiculous or rather lamentable, to be despised of men and to fall into complete dishonor, to be made by the demons, both openly and secretly, by every kind of means, a disgrace and a reproach among men, the desire to mingle and to have intercourse with the world, always to speak and behave foolishly, endlessly to seek out some new thing for oneself through false prophecy, to promise many things that are beyond one's strength. These are the trials of the soul. To the trials of the body which befall them belong painful adversities, always prolonged, intricate, and difficult to resolve, constant encounters with wicked and godless men, to fall into the hands of men who afflict us, the hearts being suddenly seized and always without reason by terror, many times to stumble severely on rocks and to have grave falls from high places and similar mishaps, which do the body great harm and injury, and finally the hearts being entirely destitute of reliance upon God's care and of the confidence of its faith. In brief, whatsoever is impossible beyond the strength of such men comes upon them and those who dwell with them. These things which we have set forth and enumerated belong to the trials of pride. Temptations of this sort commence in a man when he begins to appear wise in his own eyes, and to the extent that he accepts proud thoughts, and he goes through all these evils. Therefore, you may comprehend the subtle pathways of your mind by the kinds of trials that beset you. But if you see that you have some of these trials mingled with the trials aforementioned, then know that insomuch as you have them, pride has broken in upon you. On patience. Here yet another consideration. Every adversity and affliction, if not accompanied by patience, produces double torment, for a man's patience casts off his distress, while faintness of heart is the mother of anguish. Patience is the mother of consolation, and is a certain strength which is usually born of largeness of heart. It is hard for a man to find this strength in his tribulations without a gift from God, received through his ardent pursuit of prayer and the outpouring of his tears. On faint-heartedness. When it is God's pleasure to subject a man to even greater afflictions, he permits him to fall into the hands of faint-heartedness. This begets in him a mighty force of despondency, wherein he feels his soul to be suffocated. This is a foretaste of Gehenna. From this there is unleashed upon him the spirit of distraction, from which 10,000 trials gush forth. Confusion, wrath, blasphemy, protesting, and bewailing one's lot, perverted thoughts, wandering from place to place, and the like. And if you should ask what the cause of these things is, I answer that it is you yourself, for the reason that you have not taken pains to find the remedy for them. The remedy for them all is one, and therein in its very hand a man can find immediate consolation for his soul. And what is it? Humility of heart. Without this no man can destroy the barrier of these evils, nay, rather, he will see them triumph over him. Do not be angry with me that I tell you the truth. You have never sought out humility with your whole soul. But if you wish, enter into its realm, and you will see how it disperses your wickedness. For in proportion to your humility you are given patience in your woes, and in proportion to your patience the burden of your afflictions is made lighter, and you will find consolation. In proportion to your consolation, your love of God increases, and in proportion to your love, your joy in the Holy Spirit is magnified. Once men have truly become his sons, our tenderly compassionate Father does not take away their temptations from them when it is his pleasure to make for them a way of escape. But instead, he gives his sons patience in their trials. All these good things are given into the hands of their patience for the perfecting of their souls. May Christ God deem us worthy by his grace with a thankful heart to be patient in evils for his love's sake. Amen.